young finesse. J.O. It's been my J.O. since the day-o. But they know. Yeah. Listen for the ladies.
All right, the NL East has honestly been pretty exciting so far. Obviously the Marlins are really bad and they're in rebuild. That's probably the easiest team to realize that's in a rebuild at this point. Just really not trying. Didn't really try to keep any of their players this last year. They're letting Ozuna, letting Yelich, letting Stanton go. They've really just kind of sold as of lately. Their outfield is Lewis Brinson, who has really not hit that well since he's came up. Derek Dietrich has been all right at times when I've seen him a little bit. Been all right. He's playing left field. Cameron Maybin playing right field. Cameron Maybin's a guy that's just been in the league. He's at this point like a veteran, but he's been tossed around on 100 different teams. It's just like he's too good to play in the minors, but he's like not good enough to like want to keep him on your team in the majors. So he gets tossed around. Miguel Rojas at shortstop, a younger guy. Sterling Castro, one of the guys that came over in the Stanton trade. And then Brian Anderson at third base, who should have a pretty good year for the Marlins. And then their best player, Justin Bour, who's hit a good amount of home runs so far this year. And then they have Brian Holiday behind the plate. Not that great of a team. Pitching wise, they have Brad Ziegler as their closer. I've always liked him. His release is kind of funky, but he's been good. Jarlin Gonzalez has only gave up about a run this year. I think 1.13 was last time I looked at it, and he's not been bad, but he's playing the Yankees today, so that's going to be tough. Dylan Peters has had a couple of good starts. Caleb Smith had I think one or two good starts, and then Dan Strawley's on the DL right now, but he's supposed to be he's a pretty good pitcher, and I just you can't really trust him. The fact that he plays for the Marlins, you don't ever know what kind of run support they're gonna get and stuff like that. So it's gonna be a tough year for the Marlins. Marlins will be bad. Next, let's talk about the Phillies. As much of the improvement that the Phillies have made this year, and they're finally getting some of these younger guys into the lineup and producing, and adding other guys from other teams. Carlos Santana. Carlos Santana has really had a tough year so far. Maybe it's the fact that he's batting out the 2-hole, which is not really where I would feel like he should be at, but. They have him on the team. They have Ryan Hoskin. Or Rise Hoskin, who's been a really good hitter for them. They have Odubel Herrera in center field. They have Aaron Athier and right, Nick Williams, another one of their outfielders. And then they have Scott Kingery, who's played some outfield too. But he can play like a lot of different positions. He can play in the infield also. And he's been getting to play a good amount as of lately. J.P. Crawford is their shortstop. Don't really know about him too much. Cesar Hernandez is another young guy that they've brought up. And then Maikel Franco has had a really good year for them. He's hit pretty good so far this year. And then Jorge Afario is their catcher. So a really young team. A lot of young guys that probably you hadn't really heard of. I hadn't really heard of a lot of these guys. But they're definitely not playing terrible. They're 9-6, but I think that as the year goes on, they'll start to fall. Pitching wise is not bad either. Jake Arrieta has came over, who's a pretty good pitcher. Aaron Nola, we know that Aaron Nola is supposed to be a pretty good pitcher down the road. Nick Pavetti has been not bad this year. Vince Vasquez has been pretty good at times, and then Ben Lively. Closing wise, they have Hector Neris. So I just don't think this team's in a really tough division. The Braves are kind of about a season or two ahead of the Phillies. And, the Nationals are really good and the Mets are really good. So, It's just going to be a tough year. They're in a real tough division. Um, let's talk about the Braves. I think the Braves are definitely, trending in the right direction, on the way up, definitely. And I'm liking their lineup a lot better than I've liked it in the past. But I don't think that they're there at the Mets or the Nationals level, just at the pitching staff wise. Pitching wise, Brandon McCarthy, a veteran. Scott Kazmir, another veteran. Sean Newcomb, Mike Fultz Newick, can't say his name. Fultz Newick. He's a pretty good pitcher. He's probably been their best pitcher other than Julio uh, Teheran. Over the last couple years, those two guys have been pretty good. They have Aroides Vizcaino as their closer. And then their depth chart wise, Nick Markakis, who's been a guy that's been in the league for multiple years, pretty good player. Ender Inciarte, really good center fielder. I really like him. And then they have Ronald Acuna in right. Preston Tucker also has had a pretty good year. He's been good at times this year. Preston Tucker, he'll play some outfield. Behind the plate, they got Tyler Flowers, Kurt Suzuki. Kurt Suzuki's been playing good as of lately. He gets no love. Johan Camargo at shortstop or at third base. At shortstop, they have Dansby Swanson, who's definitely made strides and got better over the summer, been good. Ozzy Albies, he's got potential all over him. He's looked really good. Definitely this last week, he's looked really good. And then their best player, Freddie Freeman, at first base, who's a real good player. I just, like I said, I think they're a couple of years ahead of, the Phillies because, I feel like Swanson and, Albies, I don't know if Albies got to play any last year, but I know Swanson definitely got some growing pains from last year. And, there's a couple of guys for the Phillies that got growing pains last year, but their team is just a lot younger. Carlos Santana is really the only, guy from another team that's like a veteran type player that's been in these other situations. It's a really young team for the Phillies, so I'm not really sold on them yet. But they're about there, a couple years behind the Braves. These two teams are definitely coming up. Let's talk about the Mets. Now, the Mets, have one of the best pitching staffs in the league. DeGrom, Syndergaard, and then Matt Harvey looks like he's looking better. I think he can bring in some quality starts. Steven Matz is another guy that's looked pretty good also. Definitely not as good as those top three, but he's a good one. Zach Wheeler, I think, is pitching, is their fifth starter. Familia is their closer, done good. Hanson Robles has looked good in the bullpen. And then their lineup's they definitely made some strides this offseason and added some good pieces. When you talk about it, they got Jay Bruce back. I think that was huge. Cespedes is still here. Conforto, who played so good for this bad team last year, in center. And then, infield-wise, Todd Frazier, who they added, and Adrian Gonzalez, who they added. They have Wilmer Flores, who can come in and play first on, Adrian Gonzalez off days. Catching-wise, Travis D'Arnaud, who's not a bad closer. Not a great closer or anything, but not bad. And then they have Ahmad Rosario at shortstop. And then at second base, they have Asdrubal Cabrera. Asdrubal Cabrera's looked really good. Jose Reyes is backing up the shortstop. Ahmad Rosario. But, and then they have Jose, or is that his name? Juan Lagares in center field also, who they can put in center field as kind of their fourth outfielder. But this is definitely an improved team and then a really good pitching staff. The offense doesn't have that much pressure on them, and I think that's the reason that they've started as good as they have. Lost a tough game last night to the Nationals. But, the Nationals have really got outclassed this year. The Nationals have not, started the year off very well. Bryce Harper started the year off well with his 8 home runs that he's gotten, but the Nationals have really struggled. Their hitting has really not been that great. Harper have a home run here, a home run there, but other than that, I mean, Ryan Zimmerman looks dead in the water. I mean, he has not looked that great. Rendon has looked good. It's just Anthony Rendon's like basically batting out the 2-hole. Hard to really produce in the 2-hole. Trey Turner's looked good. Hopefully he can stay healthy. I mean, Adam Eaton started the year off super hot, but, I mean, he's already hurt. I think that's going to be something that continues for him as he's going to continue to be hurt. Michael A. Taylor in center field, really fast, good player. Brian Goodwin has came in and played good in the time that Adam Eaton's been out. Howie Kendrick playing second, or Wilmer Defoe can play second also. Wilmer Defoe can play any of those other positions in the infield, shortstop, third. So he's a good sub type. Matt Adams can play first base when Ryan Zimmerman needs a break. And then, behind the plate, they got Wieters. They just got Wieters back, and they got Pedro Servino, who's been really good so far this year. Really good bullpen that, building off last year. Kinsler, Ryan Madsen, and then they have Sean Doolittle as their closer. Starting pitching-wise, if Shizer and Strasburg are on the mound, they're probably going to get a win. Most of the time when those two guys are on the mound, these guys are going to get a win. Gio Gonzalez is pretty good. Tanner Roark is another good one. A.J. Cole is younger, and he's definitely struggled to start the year. But, we'll see if he can get it together. And I'm sure they have another fifth that they can put in there. They'll add somebody later in the year. But, Shizer, Strasburg, Roark, Gonzalez, really good pitching staff. They can match with the Mets down the stretch. And they, I think their offense just needs to get it together a little bit. I kind of thought this team would be a little bit hotter out of the break, but they just haven't been. I think the Nationals definitely want to win the division, but I think them or the Mets definitely can. One of them will definitely get a wild card spot at the end of the year, and I think the other wild card spot will probably come out of the NL West behind the Diamondbacks, whether it's the Dodgers or the Rockies. And I think the NL Central will be just a death race like it was last year. There'll be a winner that wins by a couple of games, but I think second, third, and fourth, between the Brewers and the Pirates and the Cardinals, I think it'll just be close all year. The way that they're going to beat up on the Reds is going to, create some wins for them.
It's the real. Yo, it's the word. Pass the herbs. Check. My man Dirty had the booty just to put me in my right mind. I rhyme stone, drop jewels and bright lines, sight dimes and slight close eyes.